A major change is on its way to Call of Dragons that could also show up in Rise of Kingdoms. In fact, this has happened many times in the past where things from one game show up into the other. So in this video, sponsored by the makers of Call of Dragons, I get to do something that I'm really hyped to be able to do, which is to make a video that combines interest for both my audiences and predict the future. Because look, we are getting new technology in Rise of Kingdoms that lets you summon a rune, okay? In this game, it's called a Mana Stone, to your location. Well, gosh, where'd that come from? Right over here. Here it is. It was in Call of Dragons first. We've seen this sort of back and forth in these games where, because it's the same teams kind of working on both games, or at least they're very closely coordinating, often a feature will show up from one place to another. And I think often that has worked really, really well because they can kind of test things in one game. And then if it's really good, they put it into the other one. So with all of that out of the way, if you're on board for the fact that things that were in one game often do show up into the other, then we can go get a look at this patch note and talk about how this update works, okay? So they say, in order to make non-combat heroes more useful within the game, we've added a new category of skills, holistic skills. Now look, they're saying non-combat heroes. That could just be non-combat heroes for now, okay? I have played a lot of games in this genre, and a lot of them will have the equivalent of what you see here as a holistic skill, but it also includes combat skills. So I think it is totally reasonable that this could expand to combat skills as well. And they say, we've changed a number of gathering, engineering, and peacekeeping related skills to fit this new category of holistic skills. When you unlock a hero's holistic skills, their skill effects will apply to all of your legions, regardless of whether or not that hero has been deployed, and skill effects can stack too. Of course, gathering, engineering, and peacekeeping heroes will still enjoy bonuses from their talents when engaged in their respective actions. And overlapping buffs from holistic skills will make these bonuses even stronger than they were before the update. So as I understand it, what they're doing is nerfing the individual effectiveness of any one hero, but elevating your total effectiveness because now all of these buffs are going to stack and apply holistically, regardless of whether or not that hero's even in the field. Which also is kind of interesting because, like, does that mean I can gather with, like, any hero? Let's talk about what skills are changing, okay? Indus, she's got a Legion gathering speed and wood gathering speed of 20 and 10%, will now be 7% and 20%. Okay, interesting. So definitely lower, but not by that much. Awakening gives a meaningful percentage of this, and it's holistic, so it's going to apply all the time. Nairnin's hero skill, Druidic Teachings, becomes holistic. We've got gathering speed of 20 and gold gathering of 20 becomes gathering speed of 7. Gold gathering speed of 15, and awakening is relevant here. Tara, okay, she goes from 2020 to 715 as well. Pan, 2020 goes to 715. Okay, well, this seems like a pretty clear pattern. Kella goes from 1510 to 510. Okay, I mean, that's a very minor nerf. It's just the Legion gathering speed, I guess, the overall gathering speed drops a bit. Kella's hero skill, Caravaneer, becomes a holistic skill. Okay, that goes from 30% to 10% load capacity. Chakcha's hero skill, Mountain Mover, becomes holistic. Also gathering speed change. Ordo's Clear-Sighted. This is gathering speed, goes from 10 and load 10 and mana gathering 10 to 5, 5, and 10. Ordo goes from 20 engineering, okay, down to 18. Okay, barely nerfed. Craig's hero skill, Building Frenzy, becomes holistic. 20% engineering now becomes 22. That's actually a buff, but needs to be awakened. Okay. Lilia's Dazzling Inferno, peacekeeping skill. Its 30% peacekeeping damage becomes 15 when awakened. Bakshi, 30% more damage, 25% more XP while peacekeeping, now becomes 10% and 10%. Nika, 30% and 30% for XP and damage becomes 10 and 10. Gwanwyn, 15% peacekeeping damage becomes 10. Eliana, holy smokes, there's so many changes. 25% damage, 20% XP becomes 7% damage and 20% XP. That's all for our summary of changes to gathering, peacekeeping, and engineering hero skills. We've also received a lot of suggestions and feedback regarding balancing heroes in combat. In order to maintain balance and improve your gameplay experience, we'll be making improvements to the following heroes. Ooh, Madeline and Garwood. So these are infantry heroes. They are speed bumps. They have been performing very poorly for me as of late, and I do not even try to use them at this point. I wonder what they'll do with them. I'd like if they could actually earn some merits. Nico, I feel like was doing pretty good for me recently, so I'd be very curious to see what they do there. Hopefully they don't change his awakening, which has really cool synergy. Freygar, I mean, I could definitely see it. I don't know why, but Sindri and Freygar got weirdly weak for me recently. And then they started to do okay again. I don't know. Theodore, I completely agree. I run him out, and I'm like, why? Why have I done this? Tohar and Bertrand, I've always felt like those reports fell a little bit short. Magro and Tanfel. Man, I maxed them on day one, and I was like, oh, I can't field with them. And they got buffed, and maybe I can field with them since they got buffed, but truth be told, because I rally in Garrison, I never can field with them because I need to make sure I have stamina. So I couldn't tell you anymore. And then Thundolin, I heard people say they were not as happy with Thundolin. And I don't know why. Her kit seems totally busted, but I am also not producing totally busted reports, I would say. So, buffing all of them seems awesome. This is big. So with regard to these holistic skills coming to Call of Dragons, we need to talk about how this could expand, okay? And they've set the boundary here to sort of indicate that, look, holistic skills apply to things that are not combat related. I think it would be perfectly fine, honestly, if they were combat related, and it would just change the way that you view hero collection in the game, obviously, if collecting the heroes had passive benefits. As it stands, that changes the way you view the peacekeeping heroes. Taking them, and the gathering heroes, taking them to awakening seems good. And the thing that I'm left struggling with is, I guess the reason you still want to use them, and they spelled this out in their mail, it is specifically because of the talents at that point, right? So you'd still use a peacekeeping hero for the peacekeeping talents. Getting extra loot seems good. All the sort of boosts you get while peacekeeping are pretty solid. This is the one I was looking for. Getting extra XP in the form of tactics manuals seems good, right? So, I run around with peacekeepers when I'm going and I'm hitting Darklings, specifically to take advantage of those talents, and that's still why you do that. The same is true for Gathering, where you'd still use them for the Gathering talents. What I do think is interesting, though, is that if you're in a combat situation, and this is especially true for Call of Dragons, come to think of it, you could gather with a fighting hero, and it would be more reasonable to do because you're going to have a ton of passive buffs that are stacking up. And in addition to that, that's so interesting. You could gather in a war zone with a combat march, go AFK, come back, get a not terrible trade, potentially with some merits. Might be terrible. I don't know. With the right infantry, you could do it maybe. You could counterattack her. I don't know. I have to put some thought into the weirdness of just gathering with a combat march. Yeah, curious. Very curious. Anyways, you enjoyed the vid? Throw a like on here, subscribe to the channel. This is a very interesting change that I could easily see showing up in Rise of Kingdoms. And this is easily a change that I could see expanding to combat heroes as well. And the thing that is so fascinating about that with regard to Rise of Kingdoms is that there are so many commanders to collect in that game that, you know, look, I'm almost all caught up in Call of Dragons. Like, there's some new heroes that showed up I'm working on. But if this were to come into Rise of Kingdoms and they also went the combat route, there is a lot of commanders I have not maxed that I would then be incentivized, obviously, to go max if they had a combat benefit that transitioned. But at this point, I'm tinfoil hatting. It's all theory crafting because they're not saying they're going to do that with combat skills. They're just saying gathering and engineering and peacekeeping for now. But like, I've got my eye on that expanding to other things. I definitely do. I think it is possible they do that. All right. You enjoy the vid? Throw a like on here, subscribe. If you want to see the last major prediction I had for something that is in Call of Dragons but could show up in Rise of Kingdoms, hasn't happened yet, but like, I hope it comes to Rise of Kingdoms. It's so good. I'll have a card in the end screen. I think this is incredibly well designed, extremely well done for the way they did the Great Heights, which is the Zenith of Power from Rise of Kingdoms. You haven't seen this video? This is a good one to go watch.